Oh, that's a great question, and even myself, I'm a good example of it. When I was in college, I trained. There were very few people when I stepped on the court that I would look at and have any inkling that they trained harder than I did. Now, this comes into something we talked about a little while ago, is the difference between training harder and smarter. Back then I trained, I learned from some very knowledgeable and experienced guys, but the way that they trained was more in a bodybuilding style, so that's how I trained. It translated pretty well to my athletic career, but I was training an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week on top of all of my skill-based training and my practices, etc. So going from what I did back then to what I do now, I probably put in a solid 10 hours in the weight room. When I was in college, I do 3 to 4 right now. So just the progression in that last 15 years or so that we're talking about is significant. Knowing what I know now, if I could have applied it back then, that would have been amazing. Where does it go from here? I think the whole industry now is shifting towards the knowledge that if you want to train for performance, things need to be a little bit different than they have historically. The challenge being is that mass media has all these different fads that people are trying to make a buck on, that they shoot out, that people don't really know what works, what doesn't. We stick to the basics here. We're going to spice things up here and there, but man, when you're in here, you're going to squat, you're going to deadlift, you're going to press, you're going to pull, you're going to do all these basic things, and then we're going to progress you from there. So I think that's a really big part of it, is developing that quality movement, developing that basic level of strength, and then building on it from there. And that's something that historically has, all those little fads of try this and try this and try this have really gotten in the way of. And I think with a little bit more education, that's going to be even more prevalent, that you got to start with the basics, not that sexy, flashy stuff that's on the infomercials. Once you get the basics down, then you can take the step to the next level and do the more advanced exercises.
This is a great point. If you look at basketball players from the 70s versus basketball players from today, the basketball players today are much more muscular, and obviously the performance is a lot better as far as, probably the number of points and blocks and assists and all that. Where do we go from here? I think where we go from here is just a lot more detailed data collection. I think collecting data is probably the most important thing and the most underutilized thing. We still don't really know exactly how certain training affects hormones. We still don't know how certain calorie intake and macronutrient intake affects hormones and recovery and fat burning and weight loss and weight gain and all that. So I think it really just comes down to collecting data, doing studies. Oddly enough, there isn't a ton of studies being done on athletic performance. There's a lot of studies being done on illness and that side of things, like the more medical side of things, because honestly there's a lot of money in that with pharmaceuticals and whatnot. But it seems in the sports performance world, a lot of people are kind of just like, well, this is how my coach taught me, and this is how his coach taught him, and this is the way things are done. Not to say that there's no scientific research being done on sports performance, but it just doesn't seem to be happening as regularly as it does with the medical side of things. So I think that's really the key. Honestly, the training is getting better, the supplements are getting better, the drugs are getting better. So that's a big part of it, but that's a conversation for another day.